A Winter of Hardship by Akenahew. When I was still young and my father was alive, we came through a winter of great hardship. My brother took me with him on many long hunts, but the buffalo were scarce that year, and there was hardly any food. Everyone looked for old bones to make grease, but it was rancid. At first there were plenty of foxes. We caught many in deadfall traps and traded their skins for tobacco, shot, tea, and sugar when traders came to our camps, but when we tried to buy pemmican, they would not sell us any. We had traveled far out onto the plains, and there were no more trees to make traps. We were told that there was food at Fort Pitt, and we started in hope towards that post. We still had 5 horses and many dogs, but wolves followed us, and when we camped, our dogs would chase them. Sometimes the dogs killed a wolf, but every day wolves killed some of our dogs. We had to kill dogs too, for we had nothing else to eat. Then we had to kill our horses for food. One day, Akenahew, night scout, came to our camp. He told us that the people we had left at the encampment had also tried to reach Fort Pitt when they learned that there was food there, and they had died along the way. He and his wives were the only ones left. They had 5 horses, and they killed one for food, but would give us none. We took the skin, and we boiled that and ate it, but we were too weak to follow Akenahew north. When he went with his wives and the other horses, we could go no farther. The winter was ending. Our women seemed to be stronger than the men. Though they were not eating, they kept moving, if it was only to make fires to keep us warm. The 3 little children with us were only skin and bones, and their mothers cried over them. We found it hard to even breathe. One night I dreamed that someone came to me and said, "You can save yourself. Look to the south." And looking south, I saw that the country was green, but to the north there was only darkness. I tried to flee to the south. The dream was vivid, and when I awoke it was almost morning. I lay thinking about the dream, and then I told it to my father. "Maybe it is only hunger that made me dream," I said, but my father told me, "Dreams count, my son. Try to go south, all of you, and if I cannot follow, leave me. I will do my best." The thaw had begun. The women went ahead of us, carrying all they could. I had a gun and I tried to hunt, but I had to rest often. Gophers were appearing, and we killed some and made fires with buffalo chips to cook them. We camped 4 times before we came to any bush. Then, early one morning, my aunt suddenly cried out that she had seen an old man buffalo. We thought she had gone crazy, but we looked where she pointed, and there stood a buffalo about 200 yards away. "Ay, it is going to be hard. Who can go?" My brother took his loaded gun and moved slowly down the valley, resting often, for he was very weak. We stayed and watched. Sometimes he was out of sight, and then we would see him again, crawling towards where the buffalo had been, but it had moved on, and we could not see it. After a long time, we heard the sound of my brother's gun, and I went to meet him. He told me that he had hit the buffalo, and it would surely die, but we would have to move our camp and follow its trail. It took us a long time to pull down the tent and move slowly after the buffalo. It was not far, but we were weak. My aunt took the gun. "I will follow the trail," she said, "and I will kill the buffalo if it is still alive." The other women went with her, all except my mother. Night came, and it was a bright moonlight when we heard the women returning, dragging great loads of meat. They were able to bring most of it back to where we had camped. The buffalo was old, and its meat was tough. The women boiled it to make soup, and that was easier for us to eat. But after a long hunger, my mother and my brother almost died. We were poor, but now we could fatten ourselves a bit, and we began to feel life in our bones once more. When I was stronger, I wandered through the bushes where we had pitched our tent, and I saw an old camp, with the tracks of foxes and wolves around it. There was a mound of melting snow, and when I kicked it, I saw a corpse, a man dead from hunger. I went back to our camp, and we moved to the river, hoping that we might meet some Stonies, my aunt's people. Each day we were able to walk a little more, and the snow was almost gone when we reached the river. Away to the west we could see people moving in single file. We knew they might be Blackfoot, and so we loaded our guns in readiness. But when they saw us, they turned towards us, moving slowly, for they had no horses and were carrying heavy loads. They were Stonies, and they greeted my aunt affectionately as a daughter. There were 11 families, and everything they had was in the loads on their backs, for they had killed and eaten their horses. But they had buffalo meat, and they fed us grease and dried meat. When we had eaten, they wanted to go on, though my father asked them to camp with us by the river at the old Sundance place. We gave them tobacco and tea, and they gave us meat. But the next day they crossed the river. We were sorry to see them go. We camped at the old Sundance place, where there was plenty of wood. The women found a buffalo head and neck in the snow, and they made a fire to boil it. I climbed the bank of the river, and as I sat there I saw something that moved and disappeared again with the wind. I went to find out what it was, and I came to a big snowdrift with a pole at the top, from which a bit of cloth blew in the wind. It marked a cache. I took off my coat and began to dig through the hard crust of snow. Down inside the drift I found hides that covered the meat of 2 buffalo, cut in pieces. I had to sit down then, for I remembered my dream and was overcome with feeling and with thankfulness to the spirits who had guided us. I tied the meat into one of the hides and pulled it down the bank as far as I could, and then I left it and went on to our camp. I found the others eating the head that the women had boiled, and my sister-in-law called to me to come and eat. I ate, and when I was finished I said to my father, "We will have another meal, a good one." I told him what I had found. "Dreams count, my son," he said to me. "The spirits have pitied us and guided us." The women hurried to bring the meat to our camp, and we stayed at the Sundance place until they had dried much of it and made pemmican, and had scraped and tanned the hides. When all that was done, we moved on. It was spring, and we went to where there were maple trees and made sugar. Truly a change had come, for now we had sugar, and the hunting was good, with a kill every day. It was pleasant in that valley, just to be alive and well, all of us, and yet we felt ashamed to be so poor, without any horses. It was lonely, too. I had begun to feel that I must have things of my own, and I was restless. I said that I would go to see if I could find some of our people, and I had not gone far when I saw a rider, a Stony whose name was Chokasi. I told him all that had happened to us, and he said, "Come with me, and I will lend you horses and carts." He came back to our camp with me. My father was surprised that I had come back so soon, and he was pleased that Chokasi would lend us horses and carts, but that is the Indian way. Then Chokasi took us to his camp, and he gave us what we needed to travel. Scouts who had gone ahead had found the women who had been with Napikikan. He had died of starvation, and yet they still had the horses that they had refused to share with us. The scouts came on Big Bear's band too, those with horses helping to carry the others. All through the country north of the Saskatchewan River there had been many deaths from starvation, and the Crees were moving west along the river, hoping to make a truce with the Blackfoot. The scouts said that the Blackfoot had not starved, for they had many horses and could follow the buffalo herds. We traveled west until we came to a Blackfoot camp. They knew of the hardship we had suffered, and we were invited into a big tent. At first we could use only signs, and then one of the Crees came who could interpret. My brother made the Blackfoot his namesake. The old man gave him a fine horse and cart. He gave me a 2-year-old to ride, but I made up my mind, after all the troubles that winter, that I would never again be dependent upon others.